When an avoidant hurts you, their mind expects chaos. They expect your world to shatter, your voice to tremble, your presence to vanish into silence that aches for them. Because deep down, avoidants survive on control, not control of others necessarily, but control of emotions. They feel safest when the world feels numb. When they hurt you, what they subconsciously test is this: can you remain calm when I pull away? Can you stay centered when I push you into confusion? And the moment you don't react the way they expect, the moment you don't chase, beg, or try to fix what's breaking, something shifts inside their mind, because suddenly you've taken away their sense of prediction. Avoidants thrive in emotional predictability. They know exactly how the script plays out. They withdraw. D, you panic. B, they gain space. G, you lose peace. It's a psychological loop. They gain control not because they're cruel, but because control feels like safety to them. But when you flip that energy, when you become still, grounded, emotionally unshaken, it's like you've rewritten the script they've relied on their entire life. They don't know how to handle a calm storm. They don't know how to handle someone who says, without words, I see your distance, I see your walls, but I'm not collapsing this time. That's where their confusion begins, because avoidance was built as armor, not as a weapon. And when you don't fight their distance, their armor suddenly feels heavy. They start wondering, why didn't they react? Why didn't they chase? Did they stop caring? Or have they finally understood me? This is how power shifts silently. You don't reclaim it by shouting louder or loving harder. You reclaim it by standing still in your own peace. That peace becomes the mirror they can't look away from. You see, the most powerful move when an avoidant hurts you is not punishment, it's presence. It's emotional mastery. It's showing them through your calm energy that their withdrawal no longer defines your stability. When you master this level of control, something extraordinary happens. You stop bleeding energy toward what broke you. You begin healing in front of the very person who expected you to fall apart. And that's what confuses them most, because avoidance was meant to keep them safe, not to make them feel powerless. They start questioning their behavior, replaying the silence, analyzing the peace you radiate. And the irony, the same calm they once ran from now becomes the calm they crave, because it feels safe. It feels like emotional intelligence. It feels like love without chaos. So when an avoidant hurts you, don't fight for attention, don't chase closure, don't over-explain. Become peace. Not the kind that's passive or indifferent, but the kind that radiates self-respect, inner balance, and quiet strength. That's what truly confuses their mind. Because while they were prepared for your reaction, they weren't ready for your evolution. When an avoidant hurts you, your first instinct is to fill the silence. You want to defend yourself, to explain, to show them how much they've misunderstood your heart. But here's the truth. That reaction, though deeply human, feeds the very cycle that's hurting you. Because the avoidant doesn't fear losing your love, they fear losing their emotional control. And when you chase clarity, they retreat further. Silence, when used with purpose, is not weakness, it's power disguised as peace. It says, I trust myself enough not to beg for understanding. When you become silent after being hurt, the avoidant's mind doesn't experience calm. It experiences disruption. They're used to emotional cause and effect. They pull away, you react. But your calm silence, it breaks the rhythm they depend on to feel safe in distance. They start thinking, what happened? Why aren't they reacting? Did they stop caring? Or have they outgrown me? That confusion is not cruelty, it's consequence. Because for the first time, they're forced to face the space they created. They have to sit with the echo of their own actions instead of being rescued from them by your emotional effort. But silence isn't about pretending not to feel. It's about feeling deeply, but refusing to hand over your emotions for validation. It's a decision to process in private what doesn't deserve public reaction. And in that quiet transformation, something powerful happens within you. You start to see how much energy you used to waste explaining yourself to someone who wasn't ready to listen. You realize how exhausting it was to chase closeness with someone who feared it. You begin to breathe differently, slowly, deeply, intentionally. You start to reclaim the energy that used to belong to anxiety, and that reclamation changes your entire vibration. You're no longer operating from desperation. You're moving from discernment. You stop trying to fix them and start focusing on healing yourself. Here's what most people don't realize is silence isn't passive. It speaks volumes without saying a word. Your absence communicates your boundaries. Your calm energy communicates your growth. Your refusal to explain what they already know communicates strength. An avoidant doesn't expect that level of maturity. They expect emotional chaos because it reinforces their worldview. See, this is why I need space. People always overreact, but when you remain composed, they lose that justification. You become the mirror that shows them the cost of their behavior without ever saying a thing. Eventually, that silence echoes back at them louder than any argument could. They replay your calm responses in their mind. They compare your emotional stability to the turmoil inside them. They wonder if maybe you're the safe one, and they're the runner. And that's where the confusion deepens. Because what they used to see as distance, they now experience as power. What they used to interpret as rejection, they start to feel as mystery. But don't mistake this strategy for manipulation. It's not about punishing them. It's about teaching yourself how to stop bleeding energy where it isn't reciprocated. Silence becomes your teacher, your healer, your armor. It allows you to see who reaches out when you stop reaching. It allows you to notice who values your presence once it's no longer guaranteed. And most importantly, it allows you to reconnect with your peace, the peace that was buried under over-explaining, over-giving, and over-caring. So when an avoidant hurts you, your greatest response isn't to prove your worth, it's to demonstrate your emotional maturity. Not through loud speeches, not through desperate closure, but through calm silence that says, I'm no longer seeking your approval. I'm standing in my truth, and that kind of silence doesn't just confuse their mind, it awakens their soul. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop suffering over someone else's emotional patterns. When an avoidant hurts you, they often expect two possible outcomes. Either you collapse emotionally or you become cold and bitter. Both feed their story that closeness is chaos and love always leads to pain. But when you detach with grace, when you stay kind-centered and emotionally balanced, you confuse that entire narrative. You show them something they've likely never seen before: love without attachment, care without control, peace without reaction. Emotional detachment is not indifference. It's awareness. It's looking at what's happening and saying, I don't need to control this anymore. It's realizing that someone else's emotional unavailability doesn't define your value or your emotional intelligence. When you detach emotionally, you stop trying to fix what's not yours to fix. You stop carrying the responsibility for their walls, their fears, and their inability to communicate. Instead, you place that energy back into yourself, into your healing, your self-respect, your evolution. Avoidants are drawn to intensity, but they fear it too. When you chase, they withdraw. When you push, they shut down. But when you detach calmly, not as a reaction, but as a revelation, you remove the emotional fuel from their pattern. They have nothing to push against anymore. You're no longer dancing in their emotional rhythm. You're standing still while they spin in confusion. They start to feel something new, discomfort. Because for the first time, you're not predictable. You're not proving your love, explaining your worth, or asking for attention. You're simply living, breathing, existing in self-respect. This kind of detachment unnerves them. It's not rejection. It's evolution. It says, I still care, but I refuse to suffer. And that energy speaks louder than any emotional confrontation. When they sense your emotional independence, it triggers reflection. Not instantly. Avoidants resist that at first, but over time, they start to wonder, why am I thinking about them more now that they've stopped reacting? Because your calm detachment flips the emotional script. You no longer feed the dynamic of chase and retreat. You rewrite it into peace and self-mastery. Emotional detachment also heals you internally. You begin to see clearly what you couldn't before. You realize that your love was genuine, but it was being poured into someone emotionally unavailable. And now, instead of waiting for them to see your worth, you embody it. This is where self-love stops being a quote and becomes your lifestyle. You begin to enjoy your own presence. You find peace in your routines. You start to glow differently, not because they validated you, but because you validated yourself. And that glow, that peace, that confidence, it confuses avoidance more than anger ever could. because they expect punishment, not peace. They expect resentment, not radiance. When you detach with emotional intelligence, they start to feel the absence of your emotional energy. Your calm energy becomes the loudest silence they've ever experienced. And soon, they start to sense what they lost, not your words, but your energy. But here's the key: detachment doesn't mean closing your heart. It means controlling your focus. It's the decision to no longer chase what's not choosing you. It's the maturity to love deeply but walk away peacefully. It's the wisdom to know that not everyone who touches your soul is meant to stay. When you master emotional detachment, you stop being reactive. You become responsive. You move with intention, not impulse. And that shift doesn't just confuse their mind. It transforms your entire emotional landscape. So when an avoidant hurts you, don't become colder. Become calmer. Don't chase, align, don't react, observe, and most importantly, don't prove. Evolve, because evolution is the one thing the avoidant never expects, and the one thing that changes everything. When an avoidant hurts you, their actions often carry one underlying message: I can't handle emotional intensity. So they create distance to feel safe. And in doing so, they trigger your deepest insecurities, not because they want to destroy you, but because your emotional expression reminds them of something they've always avoided: vulnerability. This is where most people fall into the trap. They react, they text impulsively, demand answers, and plead for understanding. But here's the truth: every time you react, you reaffirm their belief that closeness equals chaos. You show them exactly what they expect: that emotions are unpredictable and connection is dangerous. The power move: respond, don't react. A reaction is an impulse. It's driven by pain, fear, and loss of control. But a response comes from awareness. It's deliberate. It's steady. It's your higher self taking the lead instead of your wounded self. When you respond with inner calm, you flip the energy dynamic instantly. You send a silent but powerful message: you no longer have access to my peace. And that, more than any outburst, is what truly confuses an avoidant, because they were prepared for emotion, not for evolution. They were ready for confrontation, not for composure. They were expecting fire, not flow. Inner calm is not the absence of emotion. It's the mastery of emotion. It's knowing that your feelings are valid, but your expression is your choice. It's the realization that peace is not something they can give or take. It's something you cultivate within yourself. When you reach that state, your energy shifts entirely. You stop feeding their avoidance with emotional fuel. You stop giving them control through chaos. Instead, you become the eye of the storm, still, centered, unshakable. Imagine this: an avoidant pulls away, becomes distant, cold, maybe even dismissive. But instead of reacting, you breathe. You don't send that extra message. You don't spiral into overthinking. You don't try to fix it. You ground yourself. You go for a walk. You meditate. You journal. You shift your focus inward. And from that space of centeredness, you might send one calm message days later, not out of need, but out of clarity. Or maybe you don't send anything at all. Either way, your energy says, I'm at peace, with or without your validation. That energy is magnetic. It commands respect without asking for it. It forces the avoidance mind to confront something foreign: your emotional stability. Because avoidants are drawn to peace even if they don't know how to handle it. Your calm becomes a mirror that reflects their chaos. Your stillness becomes the silence that speaks the truth they've been avoiding. And slowly, that reflection becomes uncomfortable for them, not because you're punishing them, but because you're exposing what they've buried. They start to see that your emotional control is power, not passivity. It makes them wonder how someone can be so composed in the face of rejection, so peaceful in the face of pain. That curiosity creates cognitive dissonance. Their mind can't label you as needy or clingy anymore. But here's the real reward. Your inner calm doesn't just confuse them, it heals you. Every time you choose calm over chaos, you reinforce the belief that you are safe within yourself. You teach your nervous system that love doesn't have to feel like anxiety. You begin to attract peace not just in relationships, but in every area of your life. So when they hurt you, pause. Take a breath before you react. Ask yourself, what would peace do right now? And then do that, because calmness is the language of emotional mastery. And it's a language the avoidant can't ignore. You don't need to prove that you're strong. You just need to show through your silence, your detachment, and your calm that you are no longer a participant in their emotional game. You've evolved beyond it. And in that quiet evolution, you become unforgettable. When an avoidant hurts you, the pain feels sharp because it hits a deeper wound. The part of you that longs to be understood, seen, and held without fear. Their withdrawal doesn't just trigger frustration, it triggers memories. The moments you felt unseen as a child, unheard in relationships, or dismissed when your emotions were real. That's why their distance feels personal even when it's not. It awakens something ancient inside you. But here's where you reclaim your power by turning that pain into reflection instead of reaction. You see, reaction is external. It's about them. Reflection is internal. It's about you. Reaction says, why did they do this to me? Reflection asks, what part of me was willing to tolerate this pattern? When you reflect instead of react, you take your energy back from the avoidant and reinvest it into your evolution. You start to see patterns that have followed you for years. Patterns of over-giving, over-explaining, or trying to earn love through emotional labor. And in that awareness, you begin to heal. Avoidants often mirror to us the areas where we still seek validation. Their silence exposes our craving for reassurance. Their distance forces us to meet the parts of ourselves we've been avoiding. That's the hidden gift. Their behavior becomes the mirror that leads you back to yourself. So when you feel the sting of rejection, pause before reacting. Sit with your feelings. Ask yourself, what is this really about? Am I missing them, or am I missing how I felt when I thought I was loved? That's the difference between attachment and awakening. Reflection allows you to see your emotional responses as messages, not weaknesses. It teaches you emotional literacy. You begin to decode your pain instead of drowning in it. You understand that your trigger isn't a sign of brokenness. It's an invitation to grow. And as you reflect, your focus slowly shifts from them to you. You realize the person who deserves your energy most is the one you see in the mirror. You stop waiting for them to apologize, to explain, to come back. You start realizing that closure is an inside job. This reflection doesn't make you soft, it makes you powerful. Because now you're not controlled by emotional impulses, you're guided by self-awareness. And that's the level of emotional intelligence that confuses an avoidant deeply. They're used to reactions, emotional spikes, conflict, tears, chaos. It's familiar territory, but reflection, that's stillness, that's wisdom, that's something they can't categorize. They might even try to provoke a reaction just to restore the balance they're used to. But when you stay reflective, their strategies fail. They can't find the button to press anymore because you've disconnected their access to your peace. Reflection also rewires your mind. You start to remember that your worth doesn't decrease because someone struggles to receive your love. You start to see how chasing love kept you away from yourself. You realize that sometimes the most loving act is to step back and let space reveal the truth. And while they might be confused by your silence, what's really happening is transformation. You're evolving while they're processing. You're releasing while they're retreating. You're healing while they're hiding. By choosing reflection over reaction, you become untouchable. You no longer need to defend your value. Your peace proves it. You no longer beg for answers. Your awareness provides them. You no longer seek validation. Your healing becomes it. So when an avoidant hurts you, don't react in ways that lower your vibration. Reflect in ways that raise your awareness. Ask what your emotions are teaching you. Ask what boundaries were ignored. Ask what self-love looks like from this moment forward, because the goal is not to change them, it's to evolve you. And when you evolve in peace, that's when the real confusion begins. Not because you've played a game, but because you've risen above it. When an avoidant hurts you, you often find yourself replaying every moment, analyzing every silence, and trying to decode their distance. You give your energy to what's already left. And that's where you start to lose yourself. Not because they took your power, but because you handed it to them through emotional focus. Energy is attention. Where your focus goes, your emotional strength flows. So when all your thoughts orbit around them, what they're thinking, why they pulled away, if they'll return, you unknowingly keep them at the center of your emotional world. That's exactly what an avoidant expects. They rely on emotional pursuit to validate their worth while maintaining their control. But the moment you redirect that energy back to yourself, everything changes. Because now they're no longer the source of your emotional gravity, you are. Reclaiming your energy doesn't mean pretending you don't care. It means realizing your care deserves direction. It means deciding that your focus will no longer feed confusion. It will feed creation. Start by shifting your thoughts from them to you. Instead of wondering, why did they hurt me? Ask, what part of me still believes I needed their love to feel whole? Instead of overanalyzing their absence, start designing your presence. Pour that energy into your goals, your body, your art, your peace. Here's the paradox that confuses avoidants most. When you stop chasing them energetically, they start feeling your absence vibrationally. It's not just silence they notice, it's the loss of your emotional energy. Avoidants are more sensitive to energy than they appear, even when they act detached. They feel the energetic disconnection. And that's when the confusion sets in. Because suddenly, they don't sense you waiting. They don't sense your emotional pull. They can't read your energy anymore. And for someone who relies on emotional distance for control, that loss of signal feels destabilizing. They begin to wonder, why do I feel them less? Why does their peace feel louder than my silence? Why do I miss their energy when I thought I needed space? This is how you shift the dynamic, not through confrontation, but through redirection. By feeding your focus into yourself, you start vibrating at a frequency of self-worth. That frequency is magnetic. It attracts new opportunities, healthier people, and higher experiences. You start glowing differently. You start walking differently. You become peaceful, radiant, calm. And that glow isn't about appearance. It's about energy. You're no longer drained by overthinking. You're recharged by self-connection. Reclaiming your energy also redefines your emotional boundaries. You start recognizing where your love belongs and where it leaks. You stop investing in people who can't meet you halfway. You stop trying to convince someone of your value when your value is self-evident. You begin to understand that your energy is sacred. Every thought, every feeling, every heartbeat is currency. And you decide where to spend it. You stop spending it on confusion and start investing it in peace. Avoidants don't expect that kind of power. They expect you to stay entangled in the cycle, hurt, chase, repeat. But when you redirect your focus, you break the cycle entirely. You become unpredictable, not emotionally erratic, but energetically sovereign. They can't control what they can't feel. They can't understand the version of you that no longer seeks their validation. They can't read your calm. They can't interpret your peace. And that, to an avoidant, is deeply confusing. Because for once, the power isn't in their distance. It's in your detachment. When you reclaim your energy, you start being the one who reacts and start being the one who radiates. You no longer give your strength away to people who misuse it. You no longer measure your worth by someone else's fear of connection. You become whole, not because they returned, but because you did. And that wholeness, that's what truly confuses their mind, because they thought they were hurting you. But all along, they were helping you awaken. There comes a moment, after all the silence, all the confusion, and all the emotional exhaustion, when you finally realize it was never about changing them. It was always about remembering yourself. You see, the avoidant was not just a person, they were a mirror reflecting the parts of you that still needed healing. Their distance triggered your longing for closeness, their silence echoed your fear of rejection, and their inconsistency awakened your need for security. But once you stop chasing, stop analyzing, and start observing, everything transforms. You no longer see them as the one who broke you. You see them as the one who revealed where you were still disconnected from your own strength. And that's when you begin to rise. You rise not with vengeance, but with vision. You rise not with bitterness, but with balance. You rise knowing that your worth does not depend on someone's ability to recognize it. It lives in you with or without validation. The moment you realize this truth, the dynamic flips. You stop being emotionally dependent on their response and start being spiritually independent from their control. You no longer seek closure from them, because your peace is your closure. Your silence becomes your answer, your growth becomes your statement, and your energy becomes your boundary. As you grow in this awareness, something unexpected happens. The avoidant who once hurt you starts to feel the emotional shift. The calm that surrounds you becomes louder than any confrontation ever could. They sense it, not in your words, but in your energy. They can no longer predict your next move because you're no longer reacting. You've become untouchable in the most powerful way, not through arrogance, but through alignment. You have nothing to prove, nothing to chase, and nothing to defend. That level of peace is magnetic. It draws respect from those who once underestimated you and distance from those who cannot match your new frequency. You start to see that the pain had a purpose. Every tear you cried was watering the soil of your self-respect. Every unanswered message was pushing you closer to emotional mastery. Every silent night was training your nervous system to find peace in uncertainty. You didn't just survive their detachment. You evolved through it. You learned that love without boundaries becomes self-abandonment. You discovered that forgiveness isn't weakness, it's freedom. You realized that letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means rising above. And in that realization, you found the one thing you were searching for all along: yourself. So when an avoidant hurts you again, don't try to change them, chase them, or convince them. Just do the one thing that will always confuse their mind and elevate your spirit. Stand in your power, grounded, calm, and unbothered. Protect your peace like it's sacred. Live your truth without apology. Let your silence be your strength, your growth be your answer, and your happiness be your revenge. Because the greatest victory isn't getting them back, it's getting you back. You were the light all along. They just couldn't handle the brightness. Now shine without hesitation, and let the world, and even they, witness what happens when healing becomes your ultimate form of power. My friend, if this message touched something inside you, if it woke up a truth you've been ignoring, then remember this: you were never weak for caring. You were never foolish for loving. You were simply learning what your boundaries look like in real life. Thank you for being here, for showing up for yourself, and for choosing healing over chasing. If this video gave you strength or clarity, hit that I key button, not just for the algorithm, but as a personal declaration. I choose my peace. I choose my power. Don't forget to subscribe to Mindset Movements, because this channel isn't just about relationships, it's about rebuilding yourself from the inside out. Turn on the bell so you never miss another message that reminds you of your worth, your light, and your unstoppable potential. And remember, healing doesn't happen in one night, but every time you watch, reflect, and grow, you reclaim another piece of your soul. You are not behind, you are becoming. Until next time, stay strong, stay calm, and always keep moving forward. This is Mindset Movements, and I'll see you in the next video.